I'm sure you've heard the phrase employment at will, and chances are you've been led to believe it means you have no rights and that your employer can fire you for any reason. But that's not true. The reality is the rights you have today were fought for and earned by people over the last 150 years, many of whom were willing to suffer and in some cases give their lives to create protections for workers. To truly understand what employment at will means today, you have to look back at how the worker-employer relationship, otherwise known as the employment relationship, evolved over time. Before we get into it, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you realize and allows me to keep making videos like this to help you protect yourself at work. Let's go all the way back to the early 1800s. At that time, the United States was still in its infancy, and the Industrial Revolution was just beginning to build ahead of steam. Most people either lived and worked on family farms or became skilled tradespeople after long apprenticeships. Examples of these trades include carpenters, bricklayers, cabinet makers, and blacksmiths. At this time, job security didn't come from laws. It came from having hard-to-replace skills. But as the Industrial Revolution accelerated, something changed. People began leaving farms and apprenticeships to work in factories, mills, and railroads, jobs that required far fewer specialized skills. And this is where the modern employment relationship was born. Business owners hired people to work for them. But because this relationship was new, there were no guardrails. There were no labor laws, no safety standards, no minimum wage, no limits on hours, and child labor was completely normal. The result was a massive power imbalance. Employers had near total control because workers were easily replaceable, and the employment relationship became one-sided, driven by raw economic power. Fast forward to the late 1800s. The Civil War was over, and the transition to a wage-earning economy was in full swing. This was the robber baron era, a time when wealth inequality between business owners and workers reached historic levels. Many employers refused to fix unsafe working conditions, paid wages so low workers could barely survive, forced 12 to 16-hour workdays, provided no job security whatsoever. Eventually, though, workers started to push back. They realized that if they could disrupt profits, they could force change. As a result, workers started organizing into labor unions, and strikes became the most powerful tool for the labor unions to use. And the response from business owners was often brutal. At best, workers were fired and blacklisted, lists shared among employers to prevent union supporters from being hired anywhere. At worst, violence followed. Some of the most infamous clashes included the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, where over 100 people were killed after state militias were deployed. The Pullman Strike of 1894, where federal troops intervened and roughly 30 workers lost their lives. These weren't isolated events, they were part of a pattern, and the American public eventually realized there had to be limits. Ironically, it was during this same period that the employment at will doctrine first appeared in an 1877 legal treatise titled A Treatise on the Law of Master and Servant. It stated, employment without a defined contract length was at will. Employment could be ended by either party at any time, for any reason. In practice, this gave employers even more power, increasing instability and abuse for workers. By the early 1930s, the country was deep in the Great Depression and public sentiment shifted. In 1935, Congress passed the National Labor Relations Act, also known as the Wagner Act. For the first time, workers had the legal right to organize, protection from retaliation, the right to collectively bargain. Then in 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act was enacted, creating minimum wage, overtime rules, limits on child labor. These laws did not eliminate employment at will, but instead placed boundaries around it. But even with these protections, many people, especially people of color, were still excluded. Workplaces were legally segregated and discrimination was often open and lawful. That changed with the Civil Rights Movement. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act made it illegal to discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin. Over time, additional laws expanded protections to include age, disability, workplace safety. Today, here in the mid-2020s, employment at will means You can leave a job at any time. Your employer can end employment at any time for any reason, as long as the reasons are within the aforementioned laws. These laws have limited the employment at will doctrine by making it illegal for your employer to fire you or otherwise make any employment-related decisions based on your efforts to organize your coworkers into a union, your race, sex, religion, or national origin, any disability you may have or your age, as long as you're 40 or older, reporting unsafe or illegal conduct. It's important to remember these limitations within which employers must operate were built over the past 150 years through hard-fought battles and the lives of everyday people, like you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do the 2020s resemble the late 1800s in terms of wealth inequality? Are we entering another era where workers need to rethink collective action? Let me know in the comments. And if this helped you, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. I'm here to help you protect yourself and navigate today's complex workplace.